So I'm Bryant Jones. That is louder. Bryant Jones. I am a horticultural scientist from the University of Minnesota. Um, we research cannabis in a greenhouse and in a field setting. We discover new methods to make farming easier for farmers and first-time greenhouse growers. Put out extension pages and things that make agriculture more accessible to everyone. Um, I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, and so I don't have to do that. So we'll start here.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Oliver. I'm the founder of Cannabis Science Consultants. Back when I joined the industry in 2017, I noticed a huge lack of education, safety, and quality standards. So, those are the principles behind my business. I create educational content for cannabis businesses to teach their employees. I'll go in and hold workshops or spend 2 months in another state training their team, whatever it takes to whatever they're interested in. I worked with Doane University to create the first certified undergraduate hemp courses back in 2019, and so far, almost 20,000 students have been taught through that program. Um, Besides that, I just enjoy the science of the cannabis plant, and I just want to keep researching it and finding out more.
Hi, my name is Ted Reynolds. I've been in the industry for about 6 years on the extractions and formulation side, and recently in the last year founded a company called Endocannabinoid Bioscience, where we are developing ways to manufacture endocannabinoids and then also have delivery formulas and mechanisms for those.
Hi, my name is Elise Gordonholtz, and I am an edibles company 10 years. I was one of the first here in Colorado, both medical and recreational. So we were learners of formulation and obviously all played into the endocannabinoid system. So from there, I've moved with 8 years in hemp. I educate seniors. I do a program explaining to them how it interacts with our system, what THC is versus CBD, and all the cannabinoids that are coming out. Because right now they sound like a cable station when you start reading them all off, and people have no idea what they are. So I've now moved into an educational picture of all of that because I think it's really important to get the public educated. The doctors didn't even know about it, so we want to really move it along so that people coming in now can understand what your system really can do for you.
Hello, my name is Chris Morwood, and I have worked in the cannabis industry since 2013. I started in standards development with Focus, which is the foundation of Cannabis Unified Standards. Sorry. I have 3 children's books that I've written on cannabis and hemp. So educating people from a very basic level is my specialty. I also produced the Cannabis Nurses Network conference in 2017 in Las Vegas and also moderated it in 2019. I own a consumption-friendly event space here in Colorado. I do a lot of educating around the country about the endocannabinoid system, but also all aspects of cannabis, hemp, and industrial and agricultural products that can be made.
Excellent. So it's super exciting to be a part of this because the endocannabinoid system is a very important system, and it's amazing it's not even taught. My first degree is actually in herbalism, and cannabis, by many people around the world, is regarded as an adaptogenic plant. And for something to be adaptogenic, it needs to be able to tie in all the systems of the body. And this is what the endocannabinoid system, now by modern science, has a tendency to catch up with tradition. And in this case, it is just now confirmed that a lot of these systems are tied in through the endocannabinoid system, meaning the immune system, your circadian system, which regulates sleep, and your appetite. And like someone to explain maybe what the endocannabinoid system is. I know there are a few definitions because it's not necessarily defined clearly anywhere. But if somebody could explain in a few ways what the endocannabinoid system is.
So the endocannabinoid system is the 13th system in the body. So it's basically a lock and key. We do not have alcohol receptors. We do not have pharmaceutical receptors. We do have an endocannabinoid system. So that fits kind of like a lock and key system. So that's why no one has ever died from cannabis consumption. We give endocannabinoids to our children when we are breastfeeding them. So this starts at birth. And for many, many years in our country, because our country was founded on hemp, World War I, World War II both used many, many products that were made out of hemp. 40 acres and a mule, you had to grow a certain percentage of your crops, had to be hemp. So therefore our animals, all mammals, have an endocannabinoid system. What Elise said was correct. They only teach the endocannabinoid system in about 14% of medical schools, which means a lot of the doctors that you're seeing in today's medical system don't understand the endocannabinoid system. So it's best to take some resources or email them in advance when you're going to a doctor's office and say, I'd really like to hear a little more about my endocannabinoid system, because they don't like to be caught off surprise. And there are numerous studies that you can present to them and then say, next time I come in, I'd like to speak with you about it. And one thing that I think is extremely important is the quality of products that you're taking, because this plant remediates the soil and it does fit lock and key with your body, it will pull up anything in the soil, such as heavy minerals, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, anything that's used on the plant. So a quality product or a quality dispensary will give you a product sheet which will tell you where it's grown, how it's grown, what chemicals were in it. So be very careful of how you treat your endocannabinoid system, and it will treat you well. So up until about 1937, we were full of endocannabinoids. Now most people are endocannabinoid deficient. So.
In order to maintain homeostasis, which is the balance of all the systems in your body, the endocannabinoid system is actually what is in charge of everything, your circulatory, your pulmonary, everything. And actually, since it responds to your environment and produces changes, there's certain things that come into play. So like exercise, stress, the time of day, even singing and dancing, our body naturally produces endocannabinoids. So endocannabinoids are produced by the body, phytocannabinoids are produced by the cannabis plant. They can both fit into that lock and key system, the receptor, so that our body can bind it and get the benefits from it. But unfortunately, we'll probably talk about this later, synthetic cannabinoids have hit the markets, and a lot of people do confuse that with what is an actual cannabinoid, photo or endo, and unfortunately a negative stigma has been attached to that. And the synthetic cannabinoids, like spice, if you've heard of that, is we'll talk about it a little bit later, but it shouldn't be at all on the same playing field, because they're just completely different, and the studies show completely different results. So
That's important for the body. It's important for science moving forward that we include the endocannabinoid system moving forward. It's extremely important, especially with how many drugs are over the counter people use to regulate their sleep. I feel like that could be way easier augmented through the endocannabinoid system if we were utilizing these chemicals smarter than we are, not just recreationally. I'd lay some groundwork for the importance of the ECS outside of what we've already identified. Are there some major points that you would like people to know?
Yeah, I think it's really important to know that the endocannabinoid system is foundational to life. We can track it down to mitochondria, and what we learned in 8th grade biology is the powerhouse of the cell. implying that this system has been around for over 600 million years and has followed evolution throughout all of that. Additionally, the endocannabinoid production and use with cannabinoid receptors is found in the cell membrane, and the cell membrane is fundamental to mammalian life. So you can't have a cell without the membrane. And what I have always found especially intriguing about endocannabinoids is their components and how they come from a fatty acid in your cell membrane and put together with an ethylamine. We won't get into what ethylamine is right now. But so these two things come together, and then they travel and communicate with another cell and then break back down into the building blocks of the cell membrane. So I like to use the analogy of taking a brick out of a house that has a message on it that you take to another house and put in that wall, and it tells the house to open the doors. And then it's now part of the house. And then you have this cascade of cells communicating like this with these building blocks of the cell membrane. I think that's important to know about how it works.
It's amazing.
I'll add to that. The endocannabinoid system is something that now that doctors are starting to hear about it, their ears are perking. I have family members that are doctors and said they just never discussed it in medical school. I didn't even know it existed, when it's the core of everything that your body is doing. But when you take it to a level of FDA, they don't want you to know that there's something outside of them that's more natural. So that's part of it. And we have talked about, again, as I say, you've got THC, CBD, CBG, all these things. It does sound like cable television to them, because that's the only place we've heard this kind of combination. And it's this much of interaction, and the dollars needing to be put into the research is the most important thing that we need to do. And their fight is, when you have a synthetic drug that still does interact with your system, and it may be wildly, you have that whole page of disclosures. So the disclosures are a part of the bad. Oh, it's fixing my shoulder, but it's ruining my heart. But now that we know that we can fix your heart, but you could die. If not, we ruin some other part. They don't want us to be more natural, preventative medicine, but these are the things. So if the research was there, every moment it seems like we're opening up another cannabinoid that affects something in our system that is good for disease and Parkinson's and MS and all these things. And it's like, why wouldn't you want that to be out there and embrace it? Oh, and by the way, this plant makes a car. That's pretty impressive. So we do want to introduce these natural things. Your diet can completely control your body, not your Advil's good now and then, but in a sense, the prescription drugs that are all the time, these older people that have to sit like zombies that want to get off them, and their system can react naturally to much better product and put them in a better space. So it's teaching the universities about the endocannabinoid system, to lobby about it, to teach your kids, to teach your politicians, so that we can get more research done on, we have this system, why are we fighting it?
Absolutely. I actually spent some time in medical school, and I was really disappointed with how much patented drug pushing there was, and just treating symptoms instead of the core problem. So that's why I transitioned into natural medicine, because I believe it's better, but a combination of both I think is important. Some other things I wanted to talk about were two of the endocannabinoids that our body produces, AEA and 2AG. Our bodies have been producing these since the beginning of time, and if you've ever experienced a runner's high, that's actually the AEA, the anandamide, and it's like the bliss molecule, if you've ever heard of that. So that's naturally produced by our bodies. And as Christy was saying, most people are deficient in cannabinoids for a lot of reasons. But some of the other things that can contribute to dysfunction of your endocannabinoid system, which, by the way, precipitates to most chronic diseases, is to avoid like environmental pollutions, toxins, emotional trauma, poor diet, and even prescription drugs. So obviously, I'm not telling you to avoid your prescription drugs. I'm just saying that these are factors that we found in research have hurt our endocannabinoid system.
So we,
And,
oh, go on, go on.
and the other thing I wanted to say was when your body is producing these endocannabinoids, say when you're exercising or singing or whatever, or it's a stressful event, there's some sort of memory created there. So the next time it will create, enough of that chemical, a little bit more to battle what you're working on, what you need. But as Christy was saying, like we don't really have that much being produced naturally. At least most people don't anymore. So
To piggyback off what Jasmine was talking about with endocannabinoids, there's as of 2 years ago, there was over 46 endocannabinoids identified. So if you look at cannabis as any representation of how many cannabinoids there are at over 150 now, we'll likely continue to find new endocannabinoids as we go along. And so the primary precursors are in your diet, like Elise was mentioning, and primarily from omega acids. That is the direct precursor of endocannabinoids. Is omega acids, omega 3s, 6s, 9s, 8s, 7s, 5s, all that stuff. So for a direct correlation in improving endocannabinoid function in multiple levels, you're going to look to omega acids as one of those foundational in components to help improve your endocannabinoid system. Because not only is it the direct precursor, but it also is the structure of the cell where the cannabinoid receptor sits. And so if you have an imbalance between those omegas, the cannabinoid receptor scaffolding, what holds it up, will not be correct. And so your cannabinoid receptor won't function optimally until its structure around it is holding the receptor in place the way it's naturally supposed to. And that generally comes from a balanced omega profile in your cell membranes.
And can I add one more thing, is that you don't just have to use hemp or medical grade cannabis or recreational cannabis. You can get your endocannabinoid system fed through many different options. You can put hemp seeds on your granola in the morning. You can take the leaves, the actual leaves from the cannabis or the hemp plant, and you can put those in your smoothie. You can put the greens in your salad. So there are different ways of delivery systems, because especially when you're talking as a children's author about cannabis and hemp, people are like, oh, you just want to give children cannabis. But do you know that one of the top injuries in high school and college sports for traumatic brain injury and concussions, and a lot of people say football, soccer, wrestling, it's actually cheerleading. So if you could give your teenage daughter and balance her endocannabinoid system, because it's also a neuroprotectant and anti-inflammatory, putting some hemp seeds in there, putting a handful of cannabis leaves, it's not about getting high, it's about getting healthy. It's about adding to your system, making sure it's healthy and it's functioning the way it should. But we're not advocating for children to be consuming cannabis. It's just a fact that we have to talk about these things and really normalize that conversation.
And I'd like to add, I think part of that is, if you'll notice the thread that runs through any of the programs you go to, we're interacting with our own bodies, with what we're ingesting. They're worried about metals, they're worried about pesticides, they're worried about everything that goes into it, but yet our food chain just doesn't want to be in check at all. And we have the responsibility for ourselves to feed the endocannabinoid system with all these things that are the seeds, the products, the leaves, there's the stems. I mean, there's so much versatility if you want essential oils, the terpenes that come off of the plants. It's whether or not you want to do that. It's somebody who steps away from, is junk food good for my system? Well, probably not, but I do want it once in a while. So you go and you have it. So it's the balance of, even with some of, what you're vaccinating for. How good is your immune system? Do you need it? You don't need it. You fight things off. Do you fight things off because of the proper things you're putting into your system? And then every day as they find things that this plant can be combined with, why is that a bad thing? It doesn't make money for FDA, so that's sort of why it becomes a bad thing. And we have to break that stigma. Not that they don't have their place, but they don't need to be in everyone's place. And we need to educate people on how their body can make it better on its own merit.
The importance of natural products has been a constant thread in what we've been speaking about. And I'd like to dive in a little bit more into the importance of having a naturally derived cannabinoid versus one that is synthetic. And also, we touched a little bit on diet. I'd like to know how could one augment their system through diet, and the importance of using naturally derived products to do that.
Well, so the primary means I know to change your endocannabinoid expression would be through omega acid consumption. So there's a direct correlation between circulating endocannabinoids and the omega acid profile that you have in your body. So that is a natural product. Those comes from foods. You can get them supplements, but seafood, healthy nuts, avocados, and anything with healthy fat. And we're definitely seeing in tandem a resurgence in the diet and fitness community of kind of high fat diets being healthy. And the endocannabinoid system plays a big role in that.
Have we discovered where this conversion happens? This conversion of fatty acids into cannabinoids? The area in the body where that occurs at. Have we discovered that yet? Do you know that?
Yeah, in the cell membrane. So it's
Oh, it is in
yeah,
of all somatic cells? Of all somatic cells? Okay. Well, that makes complete sense then. Perfect. This is probably the best time to start fielding some questions. I'd hate to run out of time if anybody has questions. Go on.
Oh, wait, there's a mic. She's
Oh, here's a mic.
Thank you.
So I love listening to all of you. I'm fascinated and an uneducated scientist myself. I just use my own body for sampling and trying to figure out more about the endocannabinoid system. So everything you said was wonderful, but how do we find out about our own endocannabinoid system? What is the best doctor to try to find for that? Because anybody that I've ever spoken to, they have no clue about what it is, or what am I lacking in my own endocannabinoid system so I can help others. I need to figure this part out, So how do we know when we're lacking in our receptor 1 and receptor 2s and
Just like you said, you do your own research, but there's a gentleman, he's a doctor, his name is Uwe Bleshing, and he has a wonderful book out called
spell Uwe?
UWE, but it's pronounced Uwe Bleshing, Blesching, and it's called the Cannabis Health Index. It has a very descriptive scientific explanation of the endocannabinoid system, as well as going into terpenes, going into all the different cannabinoids, things like that. But it's written from a scientific perspective. Also, there's a really good conference out there too, the Cannabis Science Conference. So there are numerous conferences out there. A lot of this information is available online now too. So there are numerous conferences that you can go on webinars, but there are several books out there too. And Jack Herrera wrote some amazing books that teach us about the basics of our body, and he's more of a comic, not comic, but he had a great sense of humor, and he really had a lot of good insights as to societal influence versus what our body is capable of doing on its own.
Because don't you think that if our endocannabinoid system is lacking in some area, that all the cannabinoids that are coming out there, we can replace it through those. But we need to get to the point to where we understand which ones we're lacking and where, but we can't really see the endocannabinoid system. You understand what I mean? It's like doctors, that's why they don't know anything about it, because Israel, yeah, they do know some stuff.
So I think the best way to get a profile of how your endocannabinoid system is expressing is through a blood plasma omega acid test, as well as genetic test. So there have been genes associated with receptor expression, as well as your metabolizing enzyme expression. So there's these enzymes like FAAH and MAGL, as well as NAAA, that are responsible for breaking down the endocannabinoids back into those two components I was talking about earlier, the fatty acid and the ethylamine. So if you have a higher genetic expression of those enzymes, you'll have less circulating endocannabinoids. And so there's been some research on people who are not susceptible to pain, and they seem to have that FAAH gene eliminated. So they actually have high levels of circulating endocannabinoids and no enzymes for breaking them back down. So their pain response is, they have virtually none.
Where would I find a blood plasma testing like that?
I would suggest either a clinical nutritionist or an endocrinologist.
Okay.
Either one of those two should be able to help you get that test. There's also like consumer-facing ones like Quaint Omega, I think is the name of the test. And then the various nutritional lab testing facilities that you could probably just Google.
Thank you. Thank you.
I actually have a question for you folks. What is your perspective on cannabinoid hyperemesis, which is a cyclical vomiting disease, or disorder rather, that the most ERs are pushing on anyone who consumes cannabis?
Are you asking about a hyperemesis?
Yes.
Oh.
CHS?
Yes.
It's real.
Yes, it is. I suffer from it. Or I believe I do.
Go on. Yeah, so I can answer it first. As an herbalist, this has been something that's been clocked in Ayurvedic medicine and in Chinese medicine thousands of years ago. There are a certain sect of people who adversely, when introduced to exogenous cannabinoids, meaning from the plant, they have an allergic reaction. And there have been natural blockers that have enzymes in them that immediately counteract these negative connections that make these bad symptoms come out. Lemon juice is an acetylcolchicine blocker. There's a plant, the Native Americans identified it as sweet flag. That's another thing that can also bring down an adverse hyperemesis reaction. The most prevalent and the most widely used, which goes under our nose the most, is CBD. CBD is the natural analgesic to intensified THC poisoning. Outside of that, black pepper, there's a terpene in there, beta caryophyllene, which also helps blocking the pain. It's a pathway that has to be augmented with certain enzymes to stop the cascade of that pain. But I can let other people up here answer as well.
I want to add just anecdotally, my business partner was from Alaska, and her grandmother made everything. She would come for weeks at a time, and you can believe it wasn't like learning how to make an aspirin or some kind of, it was all natural. When you think back in history, how far we go back, everything was from the earth. They found it in a tree, in a plant, in a shrub, in an oil, in a pressing. Oh, by accident, we ran over it. Look what it extracted. Let's try it on something. We need research. We need research. We all can sit here as experts on these panels, and no offense, because you're smarter science than I am. I'm hands-on, and I experienced trying to fit all these things of how do we learn. And it comes back to, we need these kind of guys to get more dollars to be able to research what is better for our system, because we know it's not synthetic drugs. We know it can't be. We have to make it. Yes, I hate when I have to break down for an Advil, and I know it did the job, but I'm not going to do that for at least 3 more months, because in the back of my head, I'm hearing the record of, oh, those can destroy your liver. And it's like, I could smoke weed till I'm blue in the face, and quite honestly, I'm healthier than 90% of the people. I've got a great immune system. Every person's different, what works for you. So it's trial and error of what kind of oils that were essential you mixed together, and how did they make you feel? And then you relate them to other people, and they start getting off things. And it's this education, which is really where my move is, because I'm very aggravated. I don't want government controlling me because they put some crap in a pill and told me I have to have it, or I have to do it, or I got to take it, when there's natural things out there, cinnamon, turmeric, ginger. It goes on and on of what was pounded out of a rock. I'm just there, and I want to just learn what cannabinoid comes off this plant that attracts to these things that can make us better, because talking about it now, people are deer in the headlights. They're like, what? It's too many 3-letter things. It's a TV channel. So I have to joke, because until we, how we got to CBD, because we heard it like Market Grill, CBD, 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 CBD. Okay, we're done with CBD. Let's move on. They're not M&Ms. You don't order them in a bowl. So, you have to understand that when this plant got extracted, it had heavier this in it. And I laugh because now looking back, when we would hit a plant and we'd go to the lab to test an edible, and he goes, oh, there was really high CBD in it, and this is in 2011. We're like, wow, what is that? I don't know, but it does this. And then finding out by researching it, oh, this is what it does. Ooh, we should find growers that do more plants that have it in there. Oils that were just being separated out, broad spectrum, full spectrum, isolated. All these things are affecting different parts of your endo system, and we need to just keep learning about it.
And there's one more thing that you might want to consider too. Because of the way that these plants are grown, a lot of them are grown indoors, which means they have to use products for antifungal, for powdery mold, mildew, spider mites. So the incidence and the prevalence of diseases like the people that are throwing up nonstop, they also have to look at the spectrum of what the plants are grown in. So there is genetic predisposition, but there is also chemical additives.
Absolutely.
So really check your sources of where you're getting your plants, because everything that comes up through those roots, and they all say that they flush them, but if they've been grown for 4 months with these kind of chemicals, that will be in the flower when it's extracted. And also look at the extraction processes. A lot of them are butane, methylene alcohol, all these things. And again, all those chemicals are being ingested as well with whatever extractions are. So just be careful of where you get your product.
Right, and the irony is in our food chain, they won't even give us a heads up on it. And then why is cancer so prevalent? Where are all these things coming from? Allergies that went through the roof, when the worst thing, really peanuts were about the worst anybody worried about. And it's come to a really, really breaking point, I think, that we really have to watch our systems because they're breaking us down and they won't tell us what they're giving us. So you do need to learn your natural path, and if it doesn't agree with you, don't take it. You know, if it's healthy, and it could be healthy and not agree with you. You know, it's not everything. Some people just don't have a tolerance to things, but you can work through a lot of things on these plants and natural growing. Like Chris said, the soil talks your story, and if your dirt's bad and you've got crap going into it, you forget that those roots are absorbing that end result fruit or whatever you're eating is only as good as how you flushed or cleaned up your plant matter.
Yeah, I really feel like this topic, we could go all day on this because this is one of those things that it's just the tip of the iceberg. And it's a really large iceberg that's really important to all of us. And I'd like to be respectful of our time, but if there are any closing remarks you guys would like
Or
to
any
make,
more questions?
maybe you guys, if there's anything, you feel free to connect with anybody up here. I'm sure that they would love to connect with you guys, but for now, I'd like to close it out and thank you guys for showing up.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And thank you, folks, for giving me more information than any doctor ever has. I truly
Oh,
appreciate it.
thank you.